Hi, my name is Marcia Stromgren, and you've tuned in to Just the Facts. I have in the studio today Art Johnston, who is running for Senate District
8.
8. Welcome, Art. Good to have you here again.
Yes, great to be here.
So, Art, why is it that you decided to run?
I was on the school board for 8 years. As you probably know, we've been talked about that a lot. And yeah, I've seen government in action in Minnesota, and it's not good. We need more accountability. We have more accountability just not for open government, but also toward the people that the government's supposed to represent. That includes labor unions, parents, poor people, well-off people, and I don't think the government is doing any of that right now. And I see what happened in the school. Now I see that in a much broader sense in the state government. And so I decided to run. Plus, I got that expertise in schools, which I can bring to it. But government needs to be better. It has to be more accountable. It has to be more people-oriented. And right now, it's ran by special interests. And I think that's sad. So I'm running to try to make our government represent people again. And I'm hoping I can do that. I look forward to that.
So, where exactly is your district?
Okay, I'm in actually House District, running for House Seat 8A. It used to be Senate District 7, but when they reapportioned everything, it's now Duluth now is Senate District 8. And 8A happens to be the west part of that district, which is West Duluth, which is basically from Masaba Avenue out to Fond du Lac and basically up to central entrance.
So, just to clarify then, it's not the Senate seat you're running for, but it's the House District seat.
House District 8A.
8A.
Yeah.
Okay. I know when I came into politics eons ago, all of these numbers confuse me, and people call me today even and ask me, where am I located? I have to say, okay. So now that more people understand that. So, when you say the government's not representing us, do you want to be more specific about that? What is it you're seeing that representative government is not doing?
Well, one of my things is just industry. And I'll talk about very specifically for our area, northeast Minnesota, which is the mining and energy industries. Uh, We have mines, of course. I think everybody knows we have mines in northeast Minnesota. We have a lot of energy production going through the Twin Ports. And the government is not representing the people. They're not representing special interest groups. I mean, the Democratic Party, thanks to Governor Walz, has basically shut down Twin Metals. They've shut down the Keystone Pipeline. They recently appeared to have shut down the new power plant that was going to go in northwest Wisconsin, which is going to be natural gas, reducing greenhouse gases enormously. So the government, when they do all that kind of, they don't represent people anymore. They're representing ideology, an ideology that is opposed to energy and opposed to mineral use. And that is not helping out anybody. So that's why I say, the government no longer is representing people. They're only representing special interest groups, because none of that is in the best interest of the people. It's not in the best interest of poor people, not in the best interest of middle-class people, and so they don't represent people anymore. They're special interests. And our representatives currently representing Duluth, which is a DFL, they are all bought into that, shut down mines, shut down energy production in northern Minnesota. And to me, it's hard to believe that people are voting for these people when they literally want to shut down our industry in our town. That's what they want to do. So I'm running out there just to say, hey folks, look, see what's happening. Is that what you want to do? Is that in your best interest? Remember all our smartphone use and everything. Where do our smartphones come from? It comes from energy and mining. And if you take that down, hey, as if I tell people, hey, everybody wants to sit there and stare at their smartphone, hey, cool, but where does that come from? It comes from our industry. And Duluth is the backbone of the industry in America. And we should be very proud of our industries. We should be proud of the environmental controls that we have. Of course, we want to do mining and energy properly. We should be also proud that we have strong labor unions that are working in these industries. And rather than wanting to tear these down and literally calling these people a bunch of polluters, which literally the DFL does, our representatives representing Duluth want to stop all that. They literally want to stop it, Marcy. And that is not representing people.
Well,
And that is reflected in the DFL party. And as you know, I'm a walkaway Democrat because I don't think the Democratic Party in Minnesota no longer represents people. It represents special interests, it represents ideology, not people. An ideology which is not in the best interest of Duluth, nor Minnesota, nor even in our country.
well, and I can't disagree with you at all on that. And recently, a fellow in our church, his son works in the mining, and where are they shipping the ores that they're mining? China.
Well,
iron ore that's coming out of Minnesota is being shipped to China. So is that in the best interest of America? Hardly. And is it in the best interest of Minnesota? Certainly not. Also, I was at another presentation through Community Ed, and our grains are being shipped over to China. So those people in power think they're representing the people when everything is going someplace else and it's not helping our economy at all. You're absolutely right. Special interest and special.
Well, I disagree with you a little
power.
bit. I mean, I'm not opposed to exporting our resources as long as we have them here. But the thing that you've missed, Marcy, is that Northeast Minnesota has some of the most abundant mineral resources in the world, literally in the world. We probably have 50% of the known iron resources, reserves, I should say, in the world. And because of all the restrictions on mining, China has a lot of steel mines, and so does Russia. And we should be supplying the world with steel because steel is a vital part of our civilization.
But instead, is the steel made here or is it made in China with our minerals? That's my point.
Well, we're not mining our own. We are mining a very small fraction of our resources here. And
Right.
we should be supplying the world because we could be to advance our civilization, advance our systems that I think we want to. We have to be proud of our civilization and not to try to tear it down, which the DFL is literally trying to tear down our industries. And we have to be honest about that, Marcy. They're trying to tear down our industry. I don't really care. I mean, hey, it's fine if we're shipping our grains because we are very productive in our agricultural land. It's good to ship our grains to people to eat. But when we shut down our mines and we're trying to even curtailing agriculture because of harebrained policies, because of misunderstanding, because of lack of science, we are not in the best interests of our people in Duluth, and as I say, Minnesota, or even our country.
Well, I hope your voice gets heard when you're elected because definitely is a different perspective than what I've been hearing is going on downstate. So.
Oh yeah, no, I mean the DFL has literally declared war on mining. They've literally declared war on energy.
Yes.
And if you look at what's happening in Europe right now, we all know we have Putin, Russia, which is literally destroying a country for no reason whatsoever except for hate. And they've been mining their energy all along, and they've watched Europe cut back their energy and their mineral production in the guise of environmentalism. And now Europe is in a very dire situation when it comes to resources. It is really questionable whether or not Europe can sustain its economy because they no longer have any resources. They've cut that all back. But
And
cutting it back by getting it all from Russia and China.
Exactly.
And that is a bad situation, and that's the same thing that's happening here, Marcy.
Exactly. Yes.
And it's, I don't care who they are, but we know Russia's a bad apple. They're a rogue country, and yet we're buying energy from Europe is buying energy from them. Remember, America. 3 years ago, America was actually exporting energy. I'm not opposed to exporting energy, steel, grain, or anything. I think that's good if we can do it. But now we're importing energy. And we see Biden going literally begging other foreign countries to give us energy. It reminds me of, the Democratic Party reminds me of beggars on the street corners in Duluth. We have a lot of them begging for things. They're out there begging other countries to give us energy. That is not good, Marcy.
I don't disagree.
Right.
Well, how about education? What's your opinion on that?
Well, we know education. It's like I've been on the school board for 8 years, so I've been there, done that. And I've been on the school board for about 4 years now, 3.5 years. And things have gotten much, much worse in the schools, particularly due to the COVID situation. Duluth schools and Minnesota schools were not doing good when I was on the school board. I was an advocate of kids of color, of better educational outcomes. And of course, the school went after me for lots of reasons. They went after my wife, Jane. They did everything they could to try to destroy me. Hey, they weren't successful. Had to take them to court a couple times just because I wanted to speak up. We had the red plan, totally wasted money. But also, we have educational achievement, which is in the toilet, literally, Marcy. Duluth schools are among the worst at graduating kids of color, which is African Americans, Native Americans. And they're also not very good at graduating our white students. And that's just not in Duluth, it's in Minnesota. So I seen that. I tried to bring that attention to people. And of course, the school board, oh my God, how dare anybody say that our schools are failing? Well, our schools are failing, Marcy. I'll say it again, we have the lowest graduation rates of kids of color and of white students in the state of Minnesota.
It's hit white students now.
Oh yes, of course. Yeah, and Minnesota used to be the Minnesota Miracle, right? Well, hey, the Minnesota Miracle now is on the bottom half of educational proficiency as measured by graduation rates. So we already know their schools are not doing well. I mean, there's no question about that if anybody actually looks at the facts. So what's been happening in our schools in the last 4 years? We know the COVID hit, right? It was kind of almost a blessing in disguise because we finally found out, the taxpayers and the parents, found out what our schools are doing. And in the COVID thing, it turned out they were doing nothing. I mean, literally our schools were shut down. Most urban schools were shut down. And let's not get into the COVID thing, but I'll just say that it's shut down for extremely poor reasons. And worst of all, the education that the kids were getting was non-existent. And for 2 years, our kids sacrificed 2 years of their education due to the COVID stuff. And of course, during this whole thing, hey, the superintendent still made $175,000 a year. Is at $185,000 now. The school teachers were still making an average salary of $62,000 a year. How many other people in Duluth make $62,000 a year for doing nothing but sitting on their butt when they don't even go to school anymore? Also, we found out that teachers of schools, not the teachers, I'm sympathetic with the teachers, the plights, although I wish they were a little more vocal on what's happening. The schools don't seem to be concerned about the poor achievement or the achievement gap in the achievement of our students. And what's happened now, of course, is that the schools, they put all this money into things like equity. That was just starting to rear its ugly head back when I was on the school board. I just thought, this is just a bunch of people playing around with words and everything. But now, the energy in all our classes is going into things like equity, bullying, all these kind of white supremacy charges, racism, and they don't seem to care about educating kids at all anymore, Marcy. And it is really, if you thought things were bad 4 years ago when we talked about the schools, things are a whole lot worse. I've talked to a lot of parents come up and say, hey, you know about the school system. Yeah, I do. I know how it works. And they were very disgusted about what was happening in our schools. Our kids were not getting an education. The education they were getting wasn't about academics anymore. It wasn't about reading, writing, and arithmetic. It was about things like equity and talking about your white privilege. That isn't how you get kids to be successful in the world. You challenge them, you expect them to graduate, you expect them to excel in academics, because I think our society depends on science, depends on excellence, it depends on hardworking people. And none of that is being taught in our schools anymore. And I'll go further, Marcy. Why am I running? I've seen how bad the schools are being run in Minnesota, thanks to the DFL right now. The DFL is really running our schools right down to the bottom. And it's time that we give parents choice. It's time that they, instead of giving schools, Marcy, as you know, I'll say it, I've said this here before on your program, our schools are getting, you know how much money? Right now we're getting about $20,000 per student of taxpayers' money going into the Duluth school system. The average in the state is a little bit lower because we're still paying for this enormous red plan and everything. But the average in the state is about $12,000 to $13,000 now. And okay, instead of that money going to these school systems, which are failing our kids, Marcy, these are failing our children. And anybody doesn't admit that is better look around again, or else they better get their head out of the sand and realize that, hey, let's have some truth in our journalism right now. I mean, that's even been acknowledged by Minnesota Public Radio, knows that our schools have been failing. So when NPR even starts admitting that our schools are failing, hey, there's something really going on. So it's time that parents get choice. It's time that they're allowed to take that $15,000 of what it happens to be in their district. That should go to the parents. They can educate their children how they want. And if that means homeschooling, that would be great. Okay, if you're too busy, if you got two working families, take that $15,000. You got 3 kids, that's $45,000, Marcy, that parents should be getting. They can pay their grandparents to educate their children. They can afford to have mom stay at home or dad stay at home, educate their children. I think we all know that people are looking at the records now that homeschooling has been much more successful in public schools anyway. So now, particularly now, the public schools aren't doing anything either except being a bunch of propaganda. They don't teach academics anymore. So take that money to homeschool, take it back, go into a private school. But if you do go to private school, make sure that private school is educating too, because most private schools right now are not doing any better than public schools when it comes to propaganda and actually educating, expecting kids to graduate with actually academic mental skills. So yeah, so I think we have to, number one thing is we have to give parents choice. We have to give parents freedom to take that tax money and spend it how they feel is best educating their children. And I think most people are realizing that's not the public school system anymore. And yeah, that's one of the things I'm running on, Marcy, is free our education system from the shackles that is in right now.
Well, and of course I can't disagree with you more at all. I should say I can't disagree with you because I am educated. I was a pioneer in the state of Minnesota, and it was going down way back then. However, the part of education that troubles me is all the control that comes out of the state, which is overseen by the federal government. And I would like to ask you, what do you think about local control? Would you see less problems if there was not the strings attached out to Washington where they can cut off the money if you're not doing this, that, or something else?
That's the question we could talk about for hours. Basically, no, I don't agree with you, Marcy. Local control is ideally good. That's what we should have, local control. But look what's controlling us in Duluth. The only thing it controls at Duluth School is the DFL right now and the teachers union. That's the only thing it controls it. At the last election we had, you know how many people voted For the school board members, Marcy, 22%. So local control does not work if nobody cares. So now I'm not advocating for a centralized control either, because we know that's no better. But if you're going to have localized controls, first you have to have parents and taxpayers that care enough to go down and listen to what's happening on at their schools.
There we go. There we go. That's where the control starts. Is the parents have to take the time to go and find out what's going on and start demanding better.
Well, I'll add this too, Marcy, is that, I've been through several court cases, and they know they went after my wife, Jane, because she was an employee at the school because she was married to me. We all know that's a history. If people don't know this, you can find it easy, or give me a call, I'll tell you about it. But one thing about centralized control, if it's done properly, is that you have checks and balances. Now, localized control, for example, in Duluth, there is zero, everybody, checks and balances in our education system, in our local education system. There's there's no accountability there. There's no auditing going on. There's nobody talking about the dismal failure of our education system. So an advantage of more centralized control, if it's done right, it's not being done right now, Marcy, but it could be, is that there is checks and balances. There's some way, some oversight. And Duluth, I think we know not just about the school board, but Duluth has excelled. The Duluth in politics excel in character assassination. If you don't go along with the crowd in Duluth, they're going to go after you. And we all know that. If we look at the local politics, it's pretty dismal, Marcy. So that's the trouble about local control. If you got local control of people, and you think things are bad at the national level, Marcy, I tell everybody, hey, just look at the things happening in your own backyard. The things that's been that way in Duluth, Marcy, for a long time. And I was a victim of that. And they try to destroy me, and that's the way politics works in Duluth. So why do we want local control, Marcy? Yes, ideally we would like to, but we have to have people that care, people accountability, people that want to hear another side of an opinion without, ooh, you don't agree with us, we're going to go after you and destroy you. And so what's happening in national politics has been fine-tuned in Duluth for a long time, Marcy.
Well, and I can't disagree with that. But my reason for local control is the idea that we have the federal government saying, I'm going to take away your money if you don't implement these programs. And that's going on all the time. So that's far reach of the federal government, where at one time the states used to have state control over the education system, and the districts then had control over what they were taking from the state. And that's my point.
Well, a good example of that, and I'll give you a current example, is the Biden administration has now declared that gender now controls in schools. Anybody that wants to stop boys from going to the girls' locker room, they're gonna lose their federal money. So I agree with you, Marcy. Yeah. Those are things that are really bad.
Or take away lunch money if, for whatever reason that's supposed to go to the districts from the federal government. Take it away if you're not going to do this. That's the strings attached to the federal government that troubles me.
Yeah, but if schools and local control, if they were doing that, they would say, most people would say, huh? What do you mean you can let boys in the girls' locker room? That's or boys in the girls' washroom. And just talk to what's happening up in the range, Marcy. Well, this is happening, and that's being promoted by the Democratic Party, and it's also being promoted by the DFL in Minnesota. Well, and by our 3 representatives here that are representing Duluth right now.
I think we could go on the education track for a long time, but we got a couple more. So, women's rights?
Sure. I think that we touched on it already with the education thing. The Democratic Party has bought wholeheartedly into which, I don't know what you want to call it, the transgender identity. Oh, transgender people, whatever their issues are, they should have full rights as a citizen. There's absolutely no question of that whatsoever. But when you're allowing men to go in swimming pool changing rooms, locker rooms, bathrooms, that is taking away women's rights. women's rights, of which I'm a very strong proponent of. My wife was a woman, obviously, and I respected her enormously, and as I do all women, and they worked very hard to get where that. We know there's been discrimination against women, Marcy, in our society for way too long, and that had to stop. In the last 50 years, there's some negative things about maybe some of the women's movement, but overall I think it's been an enormous success. And right now this is being turned back by governments. And many women are really upset about what's happening. Like, wait a minute, I don't want this guy in my locker room. Women have a right to privacy. They have a right to have a male-free space if they so elect to. And and anybody that says that they don't have a right to that, that is anti-women. And so I think we have to really, enable women. We have to tell them that, yes, you have a right to safe space. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with this whole transgender movement. That's okay. I think they should have rights too. But that right should not infringe upon the rights of women.
Right.
And, that is just so wrong. You get the people going after J.K. Rowling for what? For just being a woman. They're going after her because she's a female. That's the only reason they're going after her. Just like the old days when the good old boys wanted all the women to sit back and cook. Hey, those days are gone, folks. They should have been gone a long time ago. But these people are wanting to bring that back again. And that is not in the best interest of women. And to me, it's really distressing. As you can tell, Marcia, it really bothers me. Because, hey, I was married to a woman. And I have a stepdaughter. And I have a sister. And wait a minute, these people should not have their rights taken away by anybody.
We only have a few minutes left, so we're going to have to cover crime real quickly.
Well, crime, I mean, we can see what happened in Minneapolis 2 years ago. The 3rd Precinct police office was literally burned down, Marcy. Nobody did anything about it. Nobody did anything about it. Huh? What is going on? This is in Minneapolis, right down the road from us. We didn't have stuff quite that bad in Duluth, but we have a fentanyl epidemic, which is we're killing record numbers of people in the state, and that's all related to crime. I mean, where does fentanyl come from? It comes from criminals, and we should not have sympathy for people that are selling drugs to people, and those people die. I mean, there's something wrong here for our society to have any sympathy for those people. These people are killing people, Marcy, from drug overdoses. I mean, if you went anywhere, Marcy, in Duluth, and hey, I moved to Duluth here 17 years ago now, you go under any overpass, and I happen to be a bridge guy, I'm working on bridges a lot, and what are you going to find underneath literally every bridge in the Twin Ports? Needles. You're going to find them in the parks. You're going to find them stuck on the walls out here of the whole Central High School, and that's what's happening, Marcy. So we want to have sympathy for these people, absolutely, but we don't want to have sympathy for drug dealers. We don't want to have sympathy for people that are moving drugs. If the federal government put a quarter amount of effort into stopping drugs right now than they did, for as an example, going after Donald Trump, we would probably make a dent in some of the deaths that are causing because of drug overdoses sold by a bunch of criminals. Incidentally, also mostly being manufactured in Mexico, coming across an open border.
Well, we won't get into the government issue here, but we do want to mention, if you have a website or any other social media that you would bring to the attention of your listeners so that they could find out more about you. And then again, the district you're running in, and to vote on November.
Yes, vote in November. Was it November 9th, whatever the Tuesday is, 8th. November 8th.
Yes.
And I represent running for House Seat 8A, which is West Duluth, basically West Duluth. 8B is East Duluth, so if you live in 8B, you can't vote for me, sorry. But Ron, I've got a website. My websites are never as good as they should be, so one of my websites is called Truth in Duluth, which is my school website. If you do a search, you'll also find our Johnston Forum 7B, which is my old website, and haven't changed it yet to 8A. Sorry, Marcy. But you can find it. Their phone number's on there. Give me a call anytime. I really like talking to people. And the people in Duluth really do care, Marcy. And it's I've been outspoken. It's interesting. All the times I've been outspoken, I have not got one crank call, one nasty person yelling at me on the phone. And people like what I say because I tell the truth, because I represent them. I do not represent special interests. I do not represent ideological, and I represent transparency in your government. Everybody wants to know what our government is doing, right? Hey, if I'm elected, I'll make sure you have a right to know what that government is doing. And that right is being taken away by the DFL.
Well, folks, you have a choice come November 8th. More control or a voice that will represent you. Art Johnston represented you when he was on the school district. I know, I stood there and filmed it for 10 years or so. And he got beaten up all the time. But you know what? Part of being free in a free society is your responsibility, which is to get out there and vote. Know your candidates before you vote for them. Otherwise, you're voting for more tyranny, which means more control, which means less freedom. It's your choice. Thanks, Art, for coming in today, and wish you the best.
Great. You're always good to hear, Marcy. It's good to see people are wondering what's going on. So, yeah, thanks for the discussion.
Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in.